Maybe one last minute reminder to mute your microphones when you're not speaking.
I forgot you can switch to grid view too, just to see everyone.
Those of us that are old enough call this Brady Bunch view.
So maybe I'll start by reading. I have some notes about the meeting to share before we begin by calling the meeting to order. So maybe I'll start with that. So welcome everyone to the June 23rd meeting of the Human Rights and Relations Commission. This is our regular meeting. This meeting is being held electronically to comply with the governor's Stay Safe at Home Minnesota order and to ensure the safety of all residents and staff. All members of the HRRC and staff are participating from their homes or offices. Before we begin, there are a few things I'd like to cover for those listening in and hoping to participate in portions of the meeting. The city is committed to hearing and receiving your input on matters. Tonight, this being our regular commission meeting, community comments will be the only opportunity to participate in the meeting. If you want to speak during the community comment portion of the meeting, when you join the call, an operator will ask you for your name and street address and put you in a queue to speak. You will be given 3 minutes to speak, and staff liaison Heidi Lee will time you. She will indicate when you have 30 seconds left and let you know if you go over 3 minutes. We have received a lot of requests for members of the public to call in and listen or comment tonight. So please be aware that we have allotted 30 minutes total for community comments. If someone ahead of you has commented on something that is similar of what you were going to share or wanted to say, please consider letting another caller share instead. We do want to hear from everyone. So you can also send in comments to the City Council or the HRC through the Council Correspondence web forum on our website. We welcome all comments. Thanks in advance for your patience as we work to conduct this meeting online using different types of software and people participating from their own homes. We hope there will not be any issues, but be assured that we will do our best to continue the meeting as best we can if there are any glitches. Has Michelle been able to log on? Nope. Great. What do you guys think? Should we go ahead or should we wait another minute? We have a pretty full agenda, so I think we should get started.
Yeah, we should probably start, but I'll send her a text.
Okay, thank you, Jasmine. All right, then. Oh, and just a reminder to the commissioners that we have to do a roll call vote, so it's a little bit different than when we meet in person. All right, let's call the meeting to order. Jennifer, would you do the roll call?
Yep. Chair Behringer.
Here.
Commissioner Edwards.
Here.
Commissioner Epstein.
Here.
Commissioner Felton.
Here.
Commissioner Isnall.
Here.
Meek. Commissioner Nelson.
Here.
Commissioner Ross.
Virtually here.
Commissioner Stringer Moore.
Present.
Student Commissioner Iyer.
Here.
And Student Commissioner Waldron.
All right, so then next on our agenda is the approval of the meeting agenda. Are there any comments about the agenda? All right, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. So moved.
Okay, second?
Second.
All right, so then it's a roll call vote. Would you do the roll call vote?
Yep. Chair Behringer.
Yes, aye.
Commissioner Edwards.
Are we saying yes?
Yes. Yay. Yeah.
Hey.
Aye. Commissioner Epstein.
Yay.
Commissioner Felton.
Aye.
Whoops. All right, Ismail? Not seeing that. Okay. Commissioner Meek? Commissioner Nelson?
Aye.
Commissioner Ross?
Aye.
Commissioner Stringer Moore?
Aye.
Okay.
All right, and so with the approval of the meeting agenda, we move on to the approval of the meeting minutes from February.
There's a chat from someone saying they're not able to, unable to unmute herself.
Okay, I can help her.
Commissioner Meek is present. She just joined in and she texted that she was coming, and I see her online.
Thanks, Kathleen.
All right.
Minutes. Are there any comments about the minutes from February's meeting? Oh, okay. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, and then Jennifer, would you do the roll call vote?
Chair Behringer?
Oh yeah, I, sorry.
Commissioner Edwards?
Aye.
Commissioner Epstein?
Yay.
Commissioner Felton?
Aye.
Commissioner Ismail?
She was having problems with her audio.
Yeah, I can, yeah. We can't hear her, I don't think. Commissioner Meek?
Here, the
Commissioner Nelson?
Aye.
Commissioner Ross?
Aye.
Commissioner Stringer Moore?
Aye.
Okay.
So with the approval of the meeting minutes, we'll move on to special recognitions and presentations. Nope, sorry, grabbed the wrong thing. Too many papers. Here we are. Actually, special recognitions and presentations, we do have something because we have new commissioners. Heidi, did you want to introduce the new members and staff? You're on mute.
That would be helpful if I unmute. So today we have two new Human Rights and Relations commissioners, Commissioner Mark Felton and Commissioner Fartoon Ismail, as well as city staff person Reese, who will be on the call as well. So if you wanted to just take a moment and introduce yourself, Commissioner Felton, Commissioner Ismail, as well as staff person Reese Karim.
Like Heidi said, my name is Reese. I'm new to the city of Edina. I'm currently serving as a city management fellow. I just moved to Minnesota actually a little bit over 2 weeks ago. So for the next couple of weeks, I will be kind of overshadowing the commission. I will be preparing to take over for Jen Garski, and I will be providing an extra layer of support for the commission. So that's me.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome. Hi, my name is Mark Felton. My family and I moved here to Edina in 2002, basically for the school system. This is my second time volunteering with the city. The first time was on the Complete Count Committee. Our goal was to create awareness and to motivate Edina residents to complete the census. I'm happy to be here and I'm looking forward to joining this commission and giving my input. So thank you.
Welcome, Mark.
Welcome. Thank you.
Welcome. So, and I guess we can't hear from Fartoon, unfortunately. So, all right, I guess we're ready for community comments. So I have some notes before we start. So the community comment portion, we will now hear from residents who would like to speak to the HRRC tonight. If you want to speak during the community comment portion of the meeting, when you join the call, an operator will ask you for your name and street address, and put you in a queue to speak. You'll be given 3 minutes to speak. Staff Liaison Heidi Lee will time you. She will indicate when you have 30 seconds left, and she will let you know if you go over 3 minutes. After the community comment portion of the meeting is done, members of the public are welcome to stay on the call and listen to the remainder of the meeting. No more public comment will be taken, and all callers will remain muted. Director Benarat, we are ready for our first commenter.
Chair Behringer, we have more than 20 people on the call right now, but no one has yet indicated a desire to speak. As a reminder to those in the call, to get in the queue, you need to press *1 on your phone's keypad. That will put you in the queue. If you decide you don't want to comment, simply press # to remove yourself from the queue. With that, I do already have some people lined up. Our first caller today is Carolyn Jackson. Operator, will you please unmute Carolyn's line? And Carolyn, once you've been muted, please begin by stating your full name. I believe your line is open. Please go ahead.
Not hearing anything. Are you guys hearing anything?
I'm not. Carolyn, your line does appear to be open. Can you hear us?
It looks like the intercall line is muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry about that. It's Carolyn Jackson, 5716 Continental Drive, Edina. And I'm calling as the Vice President of the Edina Community Foundation. And I wanted to let you know that we are very interested in working on race and equity issues. And we are ready, willing, and able to partner with you if you would like some help. We've done community dialogues and CEO roundtables, and we offer 501c3 status for groups that want to just form for fundraising. We have the infrastructure available. So I wanted to make that offer, and thanks for the work you do.
What's the name of the organization again?
The Edina Community Foundation.
Thank you.
Commissioner Stringer Moore, I'd like to say that I actually formed an initiative to tackle systemic racism, and I actually did partner with the Edina Community Foundation. So thank you very much. And thank you, Carolyn.
You're welcome. You bet.
Our next caller tonight is David Frankel. Operator, will you please unmute David's line? David, please begin by stating your full name.
David Frankel, line is now open.
David Frankel. I just have a couple comments. Obviously, looking at agenda, you're tackling some of the issues of diversity and police reform. But I find it a little, I shouldn't say a little, a lot hypocritical of the city with all these discussions which need to be going on. But the city at the same time, with the help of the state legislators, has pushed through in the state bonding bill $4.7 million to do enhancements and make the gun shooting range at the Edina public safety facility larger. And it seems to be pretty poor timing to be doing this, given what you're going to be talking about and what the national discussion is on police reform. I think this money could be better put to use in other areas of the city. I don't know at this point if it's possible to remove it from the bonding bill, but it certainly is going to cause some issues in the city. You know, once the word gets out of what this money is being used for, and on top of that, again, as you're probably all aware of, the city is being sued by the family of Brian Quiones, who was shot dead by the Edina and Richfield police departments last fall. So there's a lot of political issues going on here, and this is quietly trying to be slid through in the state bonding bill. And I really think you should talk about it because it really shouldn't be happening. Regardless of the merits of needing an upgrade to the shooting ranges, part of this, I believe, is to extend one of the shooting ranges so the police can use their long guns, which they do own as part of their SWAT group, in the shooting range. So I think, you know, you need to have an honest conversation about what this money is being used for, and you really need to say if you think it's appropriate or not, because you're the commission to talk about these issues. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, David.
Before I introduce our next caller, I would like to remind those who are on the line that in order to get into the queue, you need to press *1 on your telephone keypad. That will put you in order to speak. If you decide to withdraw from making a comment, simply press the # key. With that, I would like the operator to unmute the line of Lori Groats. Lori, well, it looks like she has withdrawn. I apologize. We do not currently have anyone in the queue. So again, I would remind everyone, if you would like to speak, please press *1 on your telephone keypad to get in the queue. Maybe Chair Berenger, we could just wait a minute or two.
Sure.
You don't even need that amount of time. I do have Elizabeth Stevens ready to speak. Operator, please unmute Elizabeth's line. And Elizabeth, please begin by stating your full name.
Elizabeth Stevens, your line is now open.
Please go ahead when you're ready.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. This is Elizabeth Stevens, and I understand that the part of the meeting devoted to further conversations about race, equity, and policing will bring us hopefully to some next steps and actions moving forward. And presumably there will be an opportunity for community members to participate in those additional conversations. My hope is that that's the case, as opposed to a closed subcommittee per se, because it is such an important topic. I'm happy to report that during my many mile walks over the last month, I continued to see an additional number of Black Lives Matter signs, as well as We Thank Our Edina Police signs popping up in yards. Some are being held very close to the front step and positioned so that only the person living directly across the street can read it, and others are placed closer to the street more boldly. And as far as I can tell, none, knock wood, have been stolen. I think this is fantastic. We probably haven't increased our Black and brown community residential neighbors that quickly, so presumably a good portion of our 85–86% white community is wanting to have conversations. That's my interpretation. And I will leave you with one quick story because I think it's germane. The woman in the neighborhood who's had a Black Lives Matter sign for 4 years, and I chatted the other day principally about hosta and ferns, but after that took place, she mentioned that her sign actually enticed a neighbor to move into the home across the street. Turns out that a Minnesota Wild hockey player had been looking for a good place to live. He and his wife were Canadian citizens of of mixed race. And a couple of months after they moved in, he told her that the reason they chose the property in Edina that they did was her sign, because they knew that they would be comfortable and welcomed within the neighborhood. So I love that story. I thought I'd share it. Jennifer Garsky liked it earlier, so that's the end of my input and comments, but I would love to be a part of any continuing conversations that might take place.
Thank you so much for your comments, Elizabeth.
We have Lori Groats back in place in line to speak. Operator, will you please unmute the line of Lori Groats? And Lori, please begin by stating your full name and address. Full name.
Yes, my name is Lori Groats. I live at 5513 Park Place. I also had a comment about the commission and their discussion about race justice and policing, and I would ask that they make a recommendation, please, to the city and to the police department, that the police department puts on the city website their policy on the use of force. Other cities are doing that, and I think that it would be a good thing for the city to be doing at this time. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Lori.
We still have more than 20 people on the line, but we do not have anyone in the queue to speak. As a reminder, if you'd like to get in the queue, please press *1 on your telephone keypad. That will indicate to us that you'd like to make a comment. It is possible, more than possible, that we have a number of people who are on the call just to hear your discussion tonight. I would recommend that we wait just a minute or so to make sure no one else wants to speak before you move on in the agenda. Again, if you'd like to speak, please press *1. I have someone ready to go. Her name is Kathy Christensen. Operator, will you please unmute Kathy's line? And Kathy, please begin by stating your full name.
Thank you. My name is Kathy Christensen, and my address is 7205 Lanham Lane, Edina. And I'm very happy that the City Council has decided to take this first step in response to the murder of George Floyd and the issues that it raised by asking your commission to plan a community conversation around race, justice, and policing. And what I'm hoping is that the commission will give a lot of consideration to an ongoing conversation rather than just a single listening session. I think the work around racism is going to need to be continuous, and we need to have many forums available to us in the city to continue this work. I'm white and I'm struggling, as I'm sure many of us are, to understand and learn more about structural racism and its impact, and most importantly, to not let myself look away from this issue as time passes. So I have 3 questions that I hope the commission will consider. First, how do community members have their questions and ideas for City Council, the police department, and city management answered in an ongoing online forum that others can view? And how does the community begin and then continue to educate itself about racism and racist policy? And how will our city hold itself accountable for creating lasting change? Again, I'm very grateful to the commission and look forward to seeing your discussion tonight.
Thanks so much for your comment, Kathy.
Thank you.
To those who are listening in, please remember to press *1 if you would like to speak during community comment. Commissioners, I do not have anyone in the queue right now, but as I said before, I would recommend you wait just a bit before moving on in case someone decides they'd like to speak. Callers, again, please press *1 if you'd like to participate in community comments. I have Felicia Franklin ready to speak. Operator, will you please unmute Felicia's line? And Felicia, then please begin by stating your full name for the record.
Hi, good evening. My name is Felicia Franklin, and my address is 3400 Park Lawn. And I would like to say that as a person of color living in Edina, I feel that things have been uncomfortable lately. And I'm wondering how we can come together and have meaningful discussions on diverse perspectives, just to get to know each other so we don't have that feeling of the unknown. I think conversations need to happen, especially around policing, just various perspectives that people have. And an example of that would be in my building specifically, there were people actually boarding up their windows, fearing that riots would come out to Edina and spreading information that seemed to kind of heighten that sense of polarization. So how can we come together as a community to get to know each other so we won't have those fears? Thank you for taking my questions, and I applaud you for having this issue on your agenda. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment, Felicia.
Commissioners, again, I'm in the position where I don't have anyone in the queue to speak. Anyone who's listening in, please remember to press *1 if you would like to participate in community comments. Commissioners, I would recommend you wait just a minute or so before moving on to make sure we don't miss anyone during community comment.
Director Benarat, do you think that that might be it?
I think that might be it. There is still no one else in the queue.
All right. I guess it's time to move on then. Is that all right with everyone? All right. Okay, so next on our agenda is reports, recommendations. Item A is community conversation around race, justice, and policing. Scott Neal is here to give us an introduction to this agenda item. And before we move on, I did want to say thank you to everyone that participated in community comments. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Back to you.
Good evening, commissioners. I'm here tonight to kind of formally transmit to you a request from the City Council. And that request is to serve your city and your residents as a commission in the lead convener, I think is the term that we want to use, for a community conversation around race, policing, and justice in the community. It is a conversation that's going on in, I would guess, almost every community in this country in some level of formality or another. In the case of our community, you know, one of the things that happens when a issue of significant or special significance comes to us is there is an interest in appointing what I think sometimes we call the blue ribbon task force, or the special committee to investigate the issue and kind of give a report back to the elected officials. One of the benefits of not having elected officials directly involved in this blue ribbon task force is that they get to stand both inside the process and outside the process. And sometimes being outside of the process gives them some perspective about how systems can be modified to reflect what they have learned. They also have a really robust workload of other subjects as well. So they aren't able typically to drop everything and commit to a very important item like the item that we're going to be talking about tonight. So instead of a blue ribbon task force, the council is hoping that you will serve as the blue ribbon task force. You know, you are people that they have interviewed, that they have vetted, they've selected you apart from others to serve the community in this role. What we're hoping is that you would consider serving in this role and taking on the larger question of how we come together to provide justice through policing or policing with justice in our community. And I don't have a lot of, I don't want to prescribe to you how you do this. I think we want to hear from you about how you think it ought to be done. But I think in terms of some broad parameters, we've already heard a couple of them tonight from community commenters. I know the council does not view this as a one-shot event. I think one of the best practices that we're seeing in community engagement in Edina and again across the country are multiple events which create multiple opportunities for people to feel comfortable participating. Sometimes people feel comfortable standing up in front of a room of 200 people and speaking their mind, but a lot of people don't feel comfortable with that. They might feel comfortable doing it in front of 8 or 10. They might feel comfortable doing it online. So providing a number of different opportunities for people to feel comfortable to share their thoughts on this issue, we think would be very important. We think it would also be important for the work of this initiative to build on the work of the Race and Equity Task Force that worked in our city just a couple of years ago. We think that's important from a staff standpoint. We think that was a successful effort and has created change in our organization, and so we think it's important to link these two initiatives. We think from a logistical standpoint, it's important that we take CDC and Minnesota Department of Health guidelines into consideration about how we do events, even things as mundane as how do we announce them, how do we advertise them, who takes the notes, what are the availability of those notes. Those are some staff functions that we want to make sure we have very clear with the commission as we think about how to do this. From a scope standpoint, I think my read of the community, and I think my read of the council, is that they are interested in something that gets into the community rather soon and doesn't persist for a year. You know, I think we spent more than a year, almost two actually, with Race and Equity Task Force. But I think this moment that we're in as a country is one that we should try to tap into relatively soon. And so the sooner we can get to this, the better. And the sooner that we could bring to the council and to the staff leadership some views of what the community is wanting in terms of policing and other public safety services, I think the sooner we get that information, the sooner we can move forward with it. Finally, I would say that we know that there's other entities, and again, we heard some of this tonight already. There are other organizations and entities that are interested in helping or that want to be part of this initiative. We heard the Community Foundation might be one of those. We heard Jasmine might be one of those. We know that the school district, the Edina School District, might be one of those as well. I think the more partners we have, yes, it can be more complex, but yes, it can be deeper and solicit more input and thoughtful feedback from the community. So I think I probably should have led off by telling you I don't anticipate that you're going to resolve this whole thing tonight and at the end of the night have it ready to go. It's too much for that. But we do want to get you started, and we have a lot. We've got, from a staff perspective, a lot to offer you, folks who have been through similar initiatives in the past, and we want to be there to help you. And that's my sales pitch for you tonight, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have for me.
Oh, sorry, Jim, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just, if I may, I would just like to say that, of course, but I'm excited about the prospect of our being involved. I think we've got something to offer on this, and I'm really thrilled also that there are as many as 20 people interested enough to sign on to this meeting to listen to it, and I hope other people will listen to it after the fact as well. And we really are going to need the input, such as the wonderful input we got from citizens this evening, and we're going to need a lot more of that. And one thing I would urge the people on this meeting listening in today would be to, if you haven't already, take a look at the race equity report that was done a couple of years ago, as well as the city's implementation plan based on that report. The city did not adopt everything that was recommended. We'd like to get your views about what the city may have done, may have missed, that's critical in your judgment. So that's all I have to say. Thank you, Scott.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so glad you pointed to the Race and Equity Task Force report, which is really easy to find on for anyone listening on the City of Edina website. And you can see the full report, and then there's actually also there's an update, a status update about the different initiatives that we recommended. And Scott, I guess my question, just having been on the Race and Equity Task Force and still in the Human Rights Commission, is that my concern with I'm thrilled so many people are interested and you guys want HRC to run it, but we are all volunteering our time and we all just run into time issues so much. And this is my 4th year on HRC. Race and Equity Task Force was plus GARE were just huge commitments. And I just want to be sure that there would be a city presence, like a city council member, a member of the police involved, not just as a one-off, and I know, but intimately involved in that group, because we need someone to help drive things forward that isn't a volunteer. I hate to say it that way, but this is way more important than putting this on human rights to run it. I think we absolutely would do awesome with ideas and whatnot. We need someone else who can execute. Other folks may disagree with me. That's my opinion, but that is just something. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Desmond.
Oh, Scott, I can probably help with this question too. Having been and working with Michelle on both GARE and the Race and Equity Task Force, I think we want to be careful that we're really focusing right now on how do we effectively have those conversations. And so from that perspective, it probably is more important that it's a member of the public, because people are going to be able to be more open and honest than they are necessarily with a staff member or a police officer in the room. What happens next, though, at the end of that phase is really probably where staff would become more involved. So if you're looking at really kind of having the conversations initially structured so that they can be done towards the beginning, mid-fall, then you would still have time to develop recommendations that the next Human Rights Commission, when new members come on, could then carry through, and then staff could become more involved in that. We will continue to be working on the Race and Equity Task Force plan throughout this entire time, and also are available to help support in any way in terms of administrative functions. I think one of the things that the commission will want to consider, though, is what is the best format to be able to have those conversations. And some might be with some staff members and some might be without.
Thanks, Lisa. Jasmine?
Good evening, everyone. I think as a person that has worked on our Sharing Values, Sharing Community initiative, I think that this is something that could roll very nicely into that platform that we already have. But then speaking as an Edina resident and a community member launching an initiative tomorrow to address systemic racism, I know that resources are needed. And it is extremely hard to do with a volunteer force. So it's lovely to hear Lisa say that we can lean in to the city for administrative support. But I know as we get to our work plan later on in the conversation, it's extremely important that we do have a budget to make sure that this work is impactful and done correctly, as opposed to just going through the motions, and making sure that it is more than just a moment, but a movement, because moments are fading and movements have impact.
Thanks, Jasmine. Does anybody else have a comment or a question?
I do, Madam Chair. I just wanted to refer back to what Lisa offered, to Michelle's comments, and also to Jasmine's comments. I think one of the things we do particularly well in Edina is boards and commissions and task forces. We have a very organized system of protocol and support. We think it's important that that policies and procedures and really goals and objectives and initiatives of the Edina community be developed and supported by people in the community, right? And that's what you're here for. We will take care of all the necessary logistical and support needs, so that you're not the one having to book the room and make sure there's cookies there and make sure the notes are taken and make sure that the meeting is recorded. That's all that stuff is support that staff will do for you, and we want to use your time and your minds in the best and most effective way possible, and we will take care of that for you.
Because I'm living this right now, and just the sheer amount of work. Is there a budgetary fund for just an administrative, like project manager consultant, to make sure, because my project is a sprint, I will say, but there's so many different ways of communicating with our community right now, as opposed to just a forum. We want to make sure that we have a strong social media presence. We want to stream. And it's a lot more than booking meeting rooms and making reservations online and providing snacks. So I just want us to realistically look at everything that is involved and be prepared for that. And I'm happy to help, but I just think that we would definitely need a point person. And I'm recommending like a consultant to lead it, because we are all volunteer commissioners.
Yeah, I think if I won't speak for Michelle, but Michelle was deeply involved in the Race and Equity Task Force, and we really did knit together a pretty good quilt of consultants and staff time and residents to pull that whole initiative together. We probably won't do the same level, or at least I shouldn't say that. I don't anticipate having to do the same level, but we will bring in the necessary support, be they paid support, consulting support, to make sure this initiative is going to be successful. It's not, we're not going to let money stand in the way of moving this forward.
And I would just add too, when Heidi Lee came on board a year ago, one of the reasons that she's here is because she does have a background in facilitating these conversations. And so while she certainly can't do it all alone, she has the skills to support you and also to know when additional resources will be needed. So that's really Heidi's job as your staff liaison. When you need more resources, she knows where and how to manage that process to get them for you. And that's where we would, not knowing right now what this will look like, that's something that we'll have to sort of figure out on the way. But I think that most people who have worked with us on task forces or community events know that we will do what it takes to make it successful.
And I do have just one follow-up too. That's good info. How involved or on board is the police force with this? Because it's the whole focus is police use of force. So I just want to understand. So because I'm sure that's going to be a big issue for anyone participating in this conversation would be, well, what are you guys going to do with this? What now, right?
Mm-hmm. So I would tell you that in terms of how on board police are with this particular initiative, I don't know, Michelle. I would say I don't know.
Okay.
They know that we're having this discussion. I have informed them. I've kept them in the loop that this is happening before we even ask the council to kind of give it their general blessing. So they know that we're talking about this tonight, and they know what's happening in the world. I think they want to. They've got their own sets of goals in terms of what it means to them to keep Edina safe. I think we need to make sure that that isn't in conflict with what the community thinks it needs to keep itself safe. So they will participate. They participated in the Race and Equity Task Force, and they'll participate. And I think it's important that you hear from them and have an understanding about what the issues are, not just use of force, but other kind of police operating procedures and policies.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Good to know.
Any other questions or comments for City Manager Scott Neal? All right, does anybody want to talk more about what they're thinking about holding a community conversation around race, justice, and policing? What you think that might look like, or potential partnerships? Jasmine?
Well, as a commissioner working on the value sharing community, and we had different subject matters, and I know Commissioner Meek and Commissioner Behringer, we were all on that committee. I think that we could easily change the topic of that initiative that we already have on our work plan for this objective.
Yeah, I totally agree. We were trying to hold off for a while then so we would have a timely topic, and I think we found one.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I think I think about our work that we did around mental health, that we actually have relationships with some of the key stakeholders. We did have the police represented at that forum. We had education. So I think, we can take it offline, but I definitely think that we have a base to work with. But I just think that the conversation is so much more than a one-time forum. And that really speaks to my prior comments about the budget and things of that nature, because it's not a one and done.
Right, I agree. I agree on all fronts that we have prior relationships. A lot of the stakeholders that we're talking about tonight participated in our mental health forum, which was a really great event. So I think that all of the tools are there to hold something, but it would just be the start of a conversation.
I do have a legit. Oh, sorry, Jasmine, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I would say that the onus is on the city, is that it's not a check the box that you had this conversation, but that we then blend this work into our race and equity task force plans throughout the various commissions and with the city council, because it's not a one and done, and it's not a check the box. It really has to be embedded, which the city started to do with the racial inequity task force, and those outcomes and how the work is funneled down to the city council and the commissioners and board. So we might have new input that we might need to then add to our various work plans.
Absolutely. And I just actually have one logistical question, just given the age of COVID, right? Does the city, do we have capacity to do, you know, say it's like a webinar to have hundreds of people dialing into it? I'm just imagining just from tonight that there would probably be a lot of interest in this, right? So what is that capacity? Because I'm just thinking over the next 6 months, I don't know if it's going to be okay to have 200 to whatever adults in a room, you know? So
I think too, it depends upon what your goals for the meeting are. So if you want to do conversations, you might not do that with that larger group. But if you wanted to mix in something which was more of a one-way dialogue or something that was larger, I think we have both Jen and Ryan still on the meeting that I'm not sure if we know at this point what that would look like or what our capacity is for numbers, but that's something we could research.
Okay, thank you.
I can let you know now that we have software that would give us the ability to host a large online forum, either using WebEx events or a platform like Intercall. Intercall has lots of other options other than the call-in feature that you experienced tonight. So based on how you design this, I'm confident that we can quickly execute with appropriate software.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Any other thoughts or comments regarding this topic?
I was going to say something. The only thing I would add is that no matter how this task force turns out and what events we hold, and we're going to hold a number of events in different forms, like Scott mentioned. But one thing that will happen and that we do plan to do as a commission is to have ongoing conversations with the police. And so I don't know if that's going to be something that's part of our work plan or something that's a new subcommittee. And I don't know what shape or form that takes. That's what we all get together and decide. But I would be remiss if I said that there was not some ongoing conversation that the HRRC is always having with the police department in some form. And I heard that concern from some of the people that were calling in. And so I don't want them to leave with the impression that this is kind of, you know, a couple events and then we're done. I think that's something that'll be part of the HRRC for a long time to come. So.
Yeah, I think we were going to talk about that during the work plan with the bias offense. Is that right, Heidi? Is that where we would discuss that?
I think there has been conversations about how to be able to incorporate conversations with any bias and offense or incidents that occur within the city. The police chief does have meetings with the chair as well as the city manager to go over the bias offense or incidents and then the outcomes after the investigation has been done. So it is dependent on when the investigations are done, but there is meetings with the police chief and HRRC commission members.
Yeah, I think we were talking more about having like an ongoing dialogue, not related to a specific event.
Mm-hmm. And so that has not.
Oh, you're muted.
So that has not been fully crafted as what does that look like as far as the biased offense or incident. So it does look like it could be two potentially different items when you think about just the scope of what we're talking about right now, which is a community conversation and how do you incorporate police conversations. And then with the bias offense incident that is on the work plan, it is just related purely to bias offense, but that could also take a different form as well.
Okay, so if we were going to have a conversation about having an ongoing dialogue, is that something that we would put on our work plan for 2021, or what would be the next steps for that?
So looking at your work plan, we are getting time to craft what your 2021 work plan looks like. So that is something that can be part of this community conversation. When you think about just the folks that have submitted their perspective on this, it could be a smaller venue, it could be a bigger venue. So that could be incorporated if you want to have police be part of that conversation more frequently. So that I think one of the things with this particular conversation that you are all having as a commission is to really craft what does this look like to have ongoing conversations, right? So to be able to say, who are our current partners? Who would we like to have partnered so that we can start having a plan of action? Because as Scott has mentioned, as well as Lisa had mentioned, is that there isn't a prescriptive way to have these. And when you think about the scope of the things that are occurring nationwide with race, injustice, and all of the civil unrest, there's many complexities. And so I think for me, the ask is really, what does it look like for community members as yourselves to say, this is what a community conversation would look like. And so
sure. I think what Michael's talking about is different though. So I'm trying to figure out when we should discuss that item.
And you can certainly discuss it in this capacity within this particular agenda item.
Yeah, and the only reason I brought it up really, Kat, is because I didn't want anyone to leave with the impression that, because I almost separate the police. I mean, of course, it's going to be part of this task force, but I want one other piece, which is that we would have a separate, I don't know if it's a subcommittee or what form it takes, but this committee, needs to have an ongoing conversation with the police department in a manner that we have the answers to residents' concerns about how do we police in Edina. And I think it's not something that happens overnight. It's not something that happens tomorrow. I think it starts with this task force, and I think that a lot of the things that we do will do that. But I think that that's another piece that we as the HRRC has to make a huge priority right away.
Sure. Scott Neal, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I did. I just wanted to let you know that having some kind of standing agenda item or a standing liaison with the police department with the Human Rights Commission is not unusual. It's pretty common, actually. In that it provides you with a go-to person in terms of kind of instructing you about what their lives are like and being able to answer questions as well. That's something we can work with Heidi and the PD to see how to put that together logistically for you.
Perfect. That's it, Scott. I think that's the way to do that. And just having a conversation, dialogue, communication is the first step for sure.
That would be fantastic. So what would be the next steps on our side? Is there something that we would need to do to make that happen, or do we just circle back with the next meeting to see where things are at?
I would recommend that as a commission, you talk about what is it that you want. And certainly having a police officer, as Scott said, come to meetings is very easy for us to do. I'm thinking, Michelle, I might have misunderstood your question earlier in terms of having police involved. Yes, if you're talking about bringing police into those conversations and having some of those interactive dialogues, I would say all of that is brainstorming within the commission and then working with Heidi, and she'll connect people who would be appropriate within the police department, and then you can go from there. But Heidi in general will always be your contact, and then she'll work with us and we will get the right people to work with you.
Great. Okay. So is that something that commissioners are interested in, having an ongoing dialogue with the police department?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Jasmine? Oh, just thumbs up. Okay. All right. Are there any other comments or thoughts or things that you wanted to discuss? Any other questions for Scott Neal? Oh, Richard?
Yeah, one of the callers mentioned that or requested that the police post its policy on use of force. And I'm just wondering if that has happened or if it could happen.
I can take this one. Yes, it can happen. Many of our peer communities have done that, and we're working on an initiative to do that as well. I think we're talking about it tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock if my schedule looks right. There's a little bit of logistical challenge to doing it, to making sure we've got it in the right spot and we describe it the same way. And it's not just use of force. We have a lot of different policies that people are interested in. But yeah, it's a good idea and we're working on it. And we should have it done here pretty soon.
Thank you.
And I do just want to add that particular request is on the race and equity work plan for the city. And so that it has been in the works prior to the civil unrest that has occurred within the nation. So that is planning to happen and will happen.
Do we reply to the callers to tell them that? I think that was Laurie that asked about the police use of force. How do we get back to the citizens that called in?
We can get back to Lori, and I think David Frankel might have asked the same question. We actually already have been communicating with them about this request. I think typically our process would be that we would get answers at the next commission meeting, but this is one that we already know the answer to and can do pretty quickly.
I just don't want us to not respond, because these guys were clearly interested enough to call in. So.
Jasmine?
I know Manager Scott Neal mentioned the fact that we would probably not be doing immediate task force right now, but I think maybe, are we keeping note of these names and the comments in written form? Should we go to a task force or a special committee to extend invitations to?
Well, we're certainly noting everything that we've heard here tonight, but I think one of the big picture messages from the council that I wanted to make sure you understood too was that they want you to be to serve in the role of that blue ribbon task force, and you may somewhere along the line you're going to add more people to this effort, I'm sure, to help you. But yes, we are tracking this right now, and it's going to become an initiative for staff to support starting tonight.
And I will just add to that, one of the things that we'll want to be very planful and mindful about on the front end, and I think was a lesson that we learned from the Race and Equity Task Force, is to be really clear about how we're taking those notes, especially if they're in the smaller group format, because we are subject to data practices. And if we're promising confidentiality, we may not be able to do that. So we want to be very careful about what are we telling people, how are we notifying people, and then how are we storing that information. So that's something that you'll want to make sure that you have a clear outline with before you actually start any of those conversations, and that legally we can manage that and still stay true to what we're promising people.
Any other questions or comments?
Well, my question is for the commission, I guess, rather than for Scott, which is, we're not going to get, I assume, too granular in our thinking tonight because we're just hearing this for the first time. What is literally our next step as a commission? Is this going to be a subcommittee that's already formed for the community conversations? Will that be the group that will get together and make some specific recommendations to the council as far as how to proceed?
To make a motion that the Sharing Values, Sharing Community Committee look at this and come to the commission with recommendations.
Well, I'll second that motion, I guess.
All right. Okay, there's a little feedback. Can you repeat the motion, Tim?
Jasmine made the motion.
Sorry. The motion is that the Sharing Values, Sharing Community Committee of the Human Rights and Relations Commission to the commission with recommendations for this community event because.
Okay. I'm a little rusty on my Robert's Rules of Order. Are we supposed to have discussion? A vote?
Yeah, I think we should have discussion after my second. Yeah.
Okay, so any discussion, Michael?
So I love what Jasmine is saying, and I think it's the right group to do that. I just want to make sure that we don't have it that they're assembling for an event. I think it's more a series of events, or a plan for a number of, and I don't know how to rephrase your motion, but I just want to make sure that you take on the, like Scott called it, the Blue Ribbon Task Force, or some sort of name for it, but I just want to make sure that the language doesn't limit it to one or two events or things. It's more of a broad initiative.
I think that was the intent of Jasmine's motion. To make those decisions about, are there going to be groups? Are we going to have groups of 10? Are we going to have groups of 100? That's something that's got to be thought out.
Yeah, I agree with you. In other words, it can live under Sharing Values, Sharing Community because it fits into our purpose very well. And what that format is, and the timing of it, and the amount of events, we will get together as a committee and then come back to the commission with recommendations.
And I think we're able to add on commission members to that subcommittee. Is that correct, Heidi?
Yes, and so I'm looking at the work plan itself. So for the Sharing Values, Sharing Communities subcommission, we have Commissioner Stringer Moore, Commissioner Nelson, and Commissioner Meek are those folks that are on that particular initiative.
So we've got room for at least one more.
I was on that one.
Okay. I will go ahead and update that.
We need to find a commissioners who don't have assignments yet. Think about that too.
Okay. Yeah. Go back with Fartune so she would have an opportunity to comment or participate. So any other comments before voting on Justin's motion? Okay, the vote?
Yep, okay. Chair Berenger? Commissioner Edwards?
Aye. Can you hear me?
Commissioner Epstein? Commissioner Felton?
Aye.
Commissioner Ismail?
Aye.
Commissioner Meek?
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson?
Aye.
Commissioner Ross?
Aye.
Commissioner Stringer Moore?
Aye.
All right, the motion passes. So should we move on to the next agenda item, B, my brother keeper? Okay. My brother keeper pledge for mayors, cities, and police. Michelle, did you want to update us on that?
This was something that I'd actually listened right after the George Floyd murder. I don't know, I think it was that week actually, President Obama did a kind of town hall with a number of experts about overall use of force and systemic racism. And there's this, what I found out is there's a great pledge on his site, and I have the link to it in the meeting notes. But basically what it does is, so Mayor Hovland would essentially sign this pledge, where it commits to 4 things that actually line up really well with what we've been discussing tonight. 1, reviewing police use of force policies. 2, engage communities by including a diverse range of input, experiences, and stories. 3, report findings and review with your community to seek feedback. And then 4, reform your community's police use of force policies. So it's very straightforward. I think it's an extension of the 21st Century Policing Initiative that was launched under the Obama administration. But there's some really good feedback from communities that have implemented this and have implemented, so from what I heard, right, there was good input from communities who had implemented this and had really good results. So again, I am no expert whatsoever. I just felt that that seemed like a really smart thing to do. And I also noticed that mayors Frey and Melvin Carter had both signed the pledge. So, and I don't know if others have since then. I haven't checked, but I did check it when I was listening to the webinar. So yes, I don't know how, what you guys think about it, if you think it's, if it would make sense. Again, I just feel like we don't need to recreate the wheel, right? Where there are a lot of great resources out there and probably some great resources for processes and procedures to kind of get us where we need to be, and really smart people who've thought this through, Sunday through Saturday. But yeah, so anyway, I was thinking that that could be an interesting thing to propose that the mayor sign. And I don't know if that's something the commission would want to back or do, but I can also just send one off him an email as a resident, but I thought it'd be more powerful coming from the commission.
Any thoughts? The only issue, Michelle, that when you first brought this up is the timeline, just because City Council already met for June and they won't meet again until, now I forget. Heidi, when are they meeting? It was like late July, like the 21st or something. Yeah, so for us to draft an advisory communication, you'd have to bring it to our next meeting, then we'd have to vote on it. So it could be some time, and by then it might be more effective if those who wanted to support this initiative that we just contact Mayor Hovland directly. But we could still, I don't have any objections to drafting an advisory communication. I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware that it might take a while.
No, that's totally right. Oh, sorry, Scott, go ahead. Not that I.
In our form of government, in the council manager form of government that Edina has, the police actually report directly up through me. So I can tell you that I would take this pledge tonight. So we can, I can commit that to you, and perhaps one of the things we do with the pledge, there is the engage and report function. Perhaps that could be part of the community discussion around policing that we just talked about in the previous item.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking the same thing, Scott. So, well, that's awesome. That's great. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Scott. That's great.
All right. So then we can move on to item C, unless there's further discussion. All right. Item C is the recap of the joint meeting with the HRRC and City Council, which was years ago. I believe it was April 21st or something. That seems like it was eons ago. We had talked primarily about the meetings and whether or not they'd be in person, and the community conversations that we were planning to hold with at the time, the Environmental Commission, and whether or not that would be in person. Things have changed since then. We also talked about the progress with the bias offense updates, and I was hoping that, Michael, you might want to share what was discussed then? I'm sorry, I'm springing this on you.
Not at all. It's very brief, but it was very positive. That was one of the areas I thought that the city council was most interested in. Of course, this is before everything happened here in Minneapolis, but we and Jim had been doing it for years, and others had touched upon the bias offense, but they really liked the idea of adding in this bias incident, which we've discussed many times at our meetings. But I think it was the first time that it was really clearly illustrated to the council, and they were very, very receptive of that. And we had a lot of momentum, it seemed like at that time, to do this. It will fit well with all the other work that we're doing, because as I was saying to Kat the other day, the fact that we were tracking these incidents and looking at the graffiti and taking everything that occurred so seriously, I think that we were on the right track as a commission, and so we'll continue that important work, and we definitely have the support of the council on that.
Yeah, it was really nice to see so much support coming from City Council. So, is there anything else that you can think of? I think that was pretty much it. It was a pretty short meeting.
Yeah, nothing. I mean, I could just be forgetting it, of course, but that was.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But in like Corona time and in real time.
Yeah, that was the thing. I mean, it was a lot about what we would and wouldn't be doing with days of remembrance and items like that. And so I think a lot of the people here on the commission were aware of all that was happening.
All right, so I think we can move on then. So Jim, you're up. It's oh, I'm sorry. It's item D, the work plan. So let's see. So this will go a little bit faster because Initiative 1 is Days of Remembrance, and unfortunately that was canceled. There was a great event planned. It sounds like there was a really good speaker on tap, and unfortunately we were not able to proceed. Does anybody want to comment? Jasmine? You're on mute.
In the spirit of everything, have there been any thoughts of revisiting it and making it a virtual event?
Not to my knowledge. I do know that the speaker is available again, Manny, for next year. We never spoke to him about a virtual event. I'm not sure if that's something that the commission would be interested in or he would be interested in. It's a powerful presentation. I don't know how well it would translate to a virtual type of event. Is the city holding any virtual events like that? And if so, what's the response been?
And how many people can you put on a virtual event? Because we're looking at a pretty good sized crowd.
Well, and I guess that's what we were talking about that before, Cindy, too, for the community conversations. For the same reason, it sounds like the city would be able, I think Jennifer, you were saying the city would be able to manage, hundreds of people if that would be the case.
A lot of these programs have like the seminar function, where you hundreds of people can.
Yeah, I question whether or not we have the capacity given the updates with the community conversations, just as a group of volunteers, that if we can hold this event as well, it might be better to wait until next spring as planned. Any further comment? Item 2 is the Tom Oy Award, which is Commissioner Berenger, Edwards, and Epstein. We haven't made any progress on that, but I suppose we'll have to start having some discussion about how to promote the Tom Oy Award, which I think is particularly timely right now. Does anyone have any comments on the Tom Oy Award?
That's not a personal event, so we should be good.
Right. I think we should, and with everything that's going on, I think we'll have some fantastic candidates for that award this year. I think we just need to make it known. Rich?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we should wait to see what develops over the next months. I suspect we will see a lot of stellar candidates.
Yeah, I agree.
I think the current conversations that we're having is going to bring out a lot of people.
And since the council's meeting now virtually, there's no reason that that couldn't be awarded in December. Is that accurate, Heidi?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, all right, initiative 3, co-chair across commission, HRC and EEC committee to coordinate sharing values, sharing communities events on the adaptation or resilience on climate change. Committee will be comprised of no more than 2 to 3 members from each commission, and 1 member from each commission will serve as co-chair. So this is the item that I think we want to amend.
Yes, and then I will work on getting that amended, since the community conversations was a direct charge for you all, and so I will start getting that wording changed, since you all have decided that with the subcommittees that are currently attached to it will be leading this.
Okay, so do we need to vote or anything, or are we set?
You're set because you voted earlier.
Oh, okay. That's right. I forgot about that. All right. So initiative. Oh, is there any further discussion before we move on? Were there any people that wanted to join that initiative? Jasmine?
I think I'm the lead on this. I'll send an email out this week to get time on everyone's calendar.
Okay, sounds good. Let's see. Any further comment before we move on?
I don't know. This will just be our commission now. We're not going to add another cross commission to this initiative, correct? Before
right now, it's just us.
Perfect.
All right. Initiative 4, review and recommend, create an assessment rubric recommendation process for city facility artwork and decor to ensure it reflects diversity of race and culture. HRC will be the lead commission, and the Arts and Culture and Heritage Preservation Commissions will appoint up to 2 members for feedback on the final recommendation before it goes to council.
And so for that particular initiative, I had just recently received the names of the 2 commissioners that were from the Arts and Culture Commission that would be part of that. So I will be sending that information to Commissioner Meek. So we did not have that previously.
Okay. Initiative 5. No further discussion on 4? Okay. Initiative 5, co-chair a cross-commission committee, HRC and PARC, in partnership with communities of color to identify barriers for participation in programming by creating a plan to reach communities of color through different modes, structure, feedback, and how data will be used. Committee will be comprised of no more than 2 to 3 members from each commission, and 1 member from each commission will serve as co-chair. And this was Edwards and Stringer Moore.
Nada. We have done 0.
Yeah. Understandable.
Go back and forth, and we have had 0 progress. So.
Room for 1 more commissioner if one of our new commissioners would like to join us on this initiative.
I would.
Thank you, Mark. Commissioner Fulton, sorry.
Are we?
Mark works.
Jasmine, you've emailed. I emailed. I mean, we have gotten 0. We had
emails back and forth. I think maybe now because we're in a new era, perhaps I don't know if we can get phone numbers and maybe call them because email in non-responsive.
I think if you can cattle prod some folks, that would be good.
I will get contact information and share it within the Parks and Commission group as well, so that you will have that.
It's really hard. They don't have a lot of data, and we've asked over and over again, how do we collect that? How do we determine, efficacy when it comes to the balance of participation in the parks stuff, and most of the park stuff is no cost, but there are some programs that are absolutely, you know, cost based. So I don't know. We need to move forward, and we don't have a whole lot of response from them.
But I would say, you know, there's other issues besides cost when we think about like the golf programming. Cindy, if I didn't know you, I wouldn't be able to access golf leagues because it's such an insular process. And so how do you engage outsiders? So cost is not the only prohibitive factor when you think about participation.
True. I mean, I don't know specifically about that, but I feel like a lot of times the sign up process is a lot more mysterious than people realize it is for various things. So that really can be a barrier.
And we don't know who's using them. I mean, nobody's collecting data. I think they may have more now than they did, but we were asking that primarily because there was some concern that, you know, the parks were really only used by the people who literally live next to them, but that's not true. I mean, there are workers, there are, you know, there's a whole community of individuals out there that we may or may not be reaching out to correctly. So, I don't know, but we have to figure this out, figure out how to make this happen.
Does this include just the use of the parks, not necessarily the park programming?
No, it was barriers to participation. It was what is making people not use them more than, I guess, the statistics about who's there now, right? It's one of the race inequity. One of the race inequity things. Help me if that's not right. Was that we were worried about the balance of access.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep. And so for this particular one on the initiative, it's the programming that's involved. So as Commissioner Edwards has previously talked about, there are some challenges with data that has been collected. And so really thinking about in that scope of how do we ensure that we're getting accurate data to represent who is even accessing the programming, and then kind of filtering out how do we then get the folks that are not even participating, that may not, for instance, may not have registered, right? So those are kind of trying to figure out what does that balance look like, and then leading and going forward with a plan. Because I think first and foremost with this particular initiative, it is reviewing what does this look like, and then being able to provide a plan. And so there's many complexities of what does this look like to be able to provide an accurate recommendation to the city council.
What is our goal? I mean, our goal is to feel like these park resources, which are a huge part of the Edina budget, you know, are adequately accessed by all of the range of Edina, either residents or workers that are here transiently. I mean, we have to figure that out. Well, how do we know we're successful?
Mm-hmm. And I think it's, you know, it's to identify the barriers, because I think if you are able to say these are the set of challenges that people are encountering with participating in the programming, and then handing it off to the Parks and Rec, you know, department to take a look at that. So for them to really analyze what does their program look like based on the findings of the barriers that have been created, right? So as Commissioner Stringer Moore talked about, it's not just the funds. It could be just the diversity of programming that's provided to people, where it also builds on if people are not feeling included or seen, or it's not something that connects to them on an individual basis, people may not want to participate, right? So it's really thinking about what are some of the other barriers in addition to cost prohibition to that.
Jackson?
Imagine that the quarantine period, we will have a lot more community engagement and community response. I know that I've talked to Heidi about a personal issue, and Jim and I both live across the street from Bredesen Park, and there was a lot of commotion with the one-way circle that it really didn't accommodate seniors and people that couldn't make the entire loop. That's just like a specific example of how the parks weren't being equitable with that change to the one-way loop. If you couldn't walk the complete 2 miles, what were you supposed to do? You're not supposed to turn around. So I imagine that we will have a lot more community feedback. And I know when we did meet, we talked about a community forum. So I think this is probably a good, because so many residents have been engaging with the park system, maybe not with programming, but just as on an individual or family basis.
That's why I asked if it was programming specific, because I live near Arden Park, and although the water level in the creek is going down, it's been like a bonanza for folks. We've had all sorts of people kayaking, canoeing, tubing, swimming even. There were tons of kids and families gathering at the park. So it's definitely an asset to the community.
You're on mute.
Oh.
Huh?
It shouldn't be.
You
We can hear you. You were on. We could hear you. Yeah, we could hear.
I hear you.
I turned myself off. Okay. Anyway. So, any further comments on Initiative 5? So Heidi will follow up with the Park Commission then. Okay. Initiative 6 is the bias offense plan review. Create definitions to differentiate between bias incidents and bias offenses with in the state statute definition, tracking and notification process for bias incidents.
Following up on that, I think that we, as we left it with the council and we have the document, and I think that was all in good shape. I wonder if this would be a good place to also have the communication with the police department and just kind of wrap it all into one, or do we feel that that should be a whole nother work plan item?
I think we should keep on the same course as we with this particular item.
And separate.
I'm not saying it's totally unrelated, but I mean, I think wasn't this submitted to staff for review, Heidi? Isn't that where we were at?
Yeah. So I have yes, I have submitted it to the police chief to take a look at it, because from conversations that we previously had, there is a bias offense policy that the police department have as well. And so I think one of the things, in order to ensure that all of the policies align, is to take a look at what is the current police policy, and then how do you mesh it so that the bias incident and offense response from the HRC clearly aligns with that. And so that in itself is something that is being looked at.
So that's kind of the path I was going down. Seems like police policy, police procedure, policing, and we definitely need to have an item on our work plan that concerns policing, and it doesn't have to be here.
Never aware that they had their own bias offense plan. And we should have been. That should have been shared with us a long time ago.
Yeah, and I know I think that there is a bias offense response plan, as far as what does it look like if the police department receives a call from community members. So it's their procedural piece to that. And so there's also a piece of how do they engage the HRC when they receive notification and the investigation starts. So it's currently, from my perspective, it looks like it's two separate policies of the handoff from police to the HRC, and that's what you have all been crafting, is what does it look like when the HRC is notified that there is a bias offense and incident. And so I think for that perspective is how do you make sure that there is a streamlined handoff from the police department to the HRC, as well as what does the role look like of the HRC when it connects to the tracking that's involved. So it is while it goes hand in hand, it also, there's two different parts to it.
So what an idea? Are we going to hear back from Chief Nelson on, or what's the next step for us?
So I have asked to have a meeting with Chief Nelson on that. And so just to kind of go over what are some of the things from the police perspective to make sure that it is aligned.
Okay, any further comments? What would be the next step in order to add to our work plan then, since it would be a separate item, to have an ongoing dialogue with the police department?
I think we would look at amending the current work plan that you all have to add that part in. So are you looking at it from the standpoint to be very clear with what does the role look like? Are you wanting to have another work plan item added, or did you want something to be added in addition to initiative number 6?
I think we could expand initiative number 6 to what Manager Scott Neal said earlier, and maybe add a liaison position or role from HRC to the police force.
I second that.
All right, is there further discussion? Heidi, could you take the roll call?
I can do it, Heidi, if you want to.
Thank you.
This is Jennifer.
Sorry.
Can you repeat? Can you repeat what the motion is?
Yes.
Want me to repeat it? Sorry. The motion is that we will implement Manager Scott Neal's recommendation and create a liaison position from the HRC to the police board.
That it's a liaison. It's somebody from our commission liaison with the police department, or the other way around.
I think it would be the members or the commissioners on initiative 6, as part of their charge, would be to have contact with the police liaison on a regular basis, which we would determine how and what that looks like. It's just that we would be the ones to take this charge.
Here.
Is that accurate, Jasmine, with what you're?
That's right. I'm sorry. There's a big deer in my backyard.
So would the motion be then to, I don't know, to establish some sort of protocol then, or?
Yeah, I think so, and I think it would be to, to find out these procedures, to find out how, the police policies, a lot of those things that we've talked about.
And I think it can be based
to rewrite that initiative number 6, right?
Yes.
You're rewriting it.
The reason why I bring it here is because we already had communication with the police department, and so I just kind of felt like maybe it was a natural fit. I think it's got to happen right away, because I think if we go to people in the city and we say that we haven't done something to communicate with the police department in pretty much every avenue that's been granted to us, I would feel that we missed an opportunity there. And if Mr. Neal's given us that opportunity, I think we have to do it right away. That's just my opinion.
No, I agree. I
would describe bias offense. I mean, bias offense is bias offense, right? So.
What was it, Cindy?
The definition of the initiative is bias offense, which is, you know, implicit bias, however you want to describe it. I think that's the perfect spot to put this.
Oh, good. Yeah. Yeah. We've redrafted that document to include both bias offenses and bias incidents. And we can send that back out to everybody, I'm sure, just to kind of review it because it's been a while. And that's one part of what this initiative is. And so we do meet with the police chief if there is an incident. But what I'd like to do is add that we meet with a police liaison and find out, like Jim just found out earlier, that they have their own bias defense plan, things like that. I just think that the more communication we have, the better. And this may be a good place to start that dialogue.
And the more data we can collect, the better, right? The more data we can publish, the better.
Yeah, that's part of the new bias incident document that we're going to actually have a person on the city staff track down the incidents. That's not being done right now. I mean,
Jasmine, do you want to say something?
No, I was just saying, going back to our earlier conversation,
Sorry, I can't hear you. I think I'm hearing Jim's car noise. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Could you repeat that?
I've muted. I don't know what that was.
Yeah, I don't know. All right.
Saying that, going back to our previous conversation, that one of the responsibilities of that liaison could be to communicate, whether you know, electronically or whatever the process is, to the HRRC when there are bias offenses that they learn about before we do. So they could really be our conduit for communication.
Our offense is all about now, our plan. I mean, that's what we're working on right now already. I'm not sure. I mean, my question about this is, if we tell them what we want, I mean, if I were them, I would say, what are we going to talk about? You know, what are we going to talk about? I mean, you know, if we're meeting regularly, you got to have an agenda, because nobody's got time to meet just for the sake of meeting. So I'm just not sure. It seems to me this is more appropriately under the police relations discussion we're going to be having with the community to find out what, you know, what is it that we need to know from the police on an ongoing basis.
I think that's a very valid point, Commissioner Nelson, to get some community feedback on what they would want to know. But following up on what Manager Neal said, one bias offense, I'd love for us to start kind of tracking. You know, we see a lot of acts of graffiti that is identified as racist remarks and things of that nature. So there are incidents happening in the city that the police are notified that kind of fall under race and equity that we might not have privy to, but that liaison could inform us.
That is what we're doing now, though. I mean, that's what we're working on now in the plan, is addressing those incidents which aren't even necessarily bias offenses under the statute. That's what we're doing. We're already doing that.
Yeah, so I think if we think about the current role of the initiative number 6, it was for this year, for 2020, the addition was to have bias incident added, right? I think with the previous years where it wasn't differentiated of bias offense versus incident. And so when it becomes bias offense, that is when a criminal act becomes part of that. And so there was not any like immediate communication with the HRC when there was a bias incident. that would be after an investigation happened. And so adding that particular piece into initiative number 6 expands on that, because
I would just say, too, as a person of color residing in the community, that we are talking about bias offenses, but there are a lot of unconscious bias offenses that happen. And so, not that we're going to start to track those, but if we can have an understanding of what those are and how they're occurring, that might allow us to be more impactful in our work.
Well, and Jasmine, that is something that we have been trying to move forward since we started put forward the Race and Equity Task Force recommendations, with some sort of mechanism whereby people could report those kinds of if someone said something to them on the street, right? Like those kinds of things that are not going to go through necessarily the police, right? So we are trying to figure out, I know that was part of the race and equity discussions, of having some sort of area where citizens and residents and workers could talk about, like, I could report things that my neighbor has done, right? Or something. I don't know that. And then I think we touched up, like, because that starts to get a little bit. I think there's some legal implications there. So sorry, I'm going to, yeah.
Do you have a specific issue, Jasmine?
Can I interrupt for one moment? There is actually a bias and discrimination form that is on the Better Together website, as well as a link on the website, the city website, where people can go ahead and indicate if there is a bias offense or incident that occurred with them. And keep in mind that was launched in March. And
awesome.
So
that's great.
People can go ahead and do that. And from the standpoint of the race and equity, I have not received any notification that people have been posting that, but there has been notification that is on the website. And so there have been people that have called to say, what does that process look like? And so I don't have a clear process because there hasn't been a report that has been sent through that particular form yet. But knowing that there is that sort of mechanism where people can report if there is a bias offense or incident that occurs.
Heidi, how are they advertising that? Is that just through Nextdoor or Vaginas?
The website or the form itself?
Yeah.
It has been placed on the website. I know that it was highlighted at the heightened point of COVID. So if people were experiencing any bias or discrimination that was occurring through COVID, that was placed on the sidebar of Edina. So if people were having those concerns, they could certainly contact me. I also were directing people to that particular site as well.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it right now. It's great. I missed that, so I'm sure that was my bad. But I didn't see that was on there. I just am looking at the link on Better Together Edina.
And I want to make sure we don't overcomplicate this, because the thing I was just saying that just a dialogue with the police department, just opening up a dialogue through this channel. Yeah, I mean that's where I'm coming back to. So we've got to do it with something, and to me it doesn't matter. It's not necessarily where it is. It's just, let's make sure we do this, and I think we need to do it now because we've got the momentum.
Well, and I did hear Scott Neal say that that's not an uncommon thing. So
correct.
I think that's something to note.
I just got a text from Jan who says, if the bias offense is on private property, the city cannot take down the bias offense. Is that true?
There is that particular ordinance with that. If it is on private property, the police department will make attempt to contact the property owner. And so it does differentiate. I think that's where there's been challenges on what does that look like when there is a bias incident or graffiti specifically. because I know that that has been a challenge of how do we respond as a city when it is on public property versus private property. I know with public property, or if it's city property, they're able to go ahead and contact the necessary department within the city to go ahead and remove that. When it does differentiate a lot when it is on private property, because the owner gets to dictate what does that cleanup look like and the cost of that.
Has there been a lot of that?
There has not been a lot that have been on private property. It has occurred. And I know that even in instances where the police have made multiple attempts to contact the property owner and have that either covered up. And then there have been other community members that have seen that this has occurred on a property owner's property and assisted with the cleanup of it.
Yikes. That's awful. Where is that track, Heidi? Is that something that we should deal with, or is that just, I mean, how do we do that?
Yep, and so that goes, that would fall under the category of, if with the tracking, I receive notification when this does happen, but I also am, it also determines on what is the scope or what is the status of the investigation. So providing, high level information of what this has occurred. However, we're not able to provide information because if it is an active investigation. So it's figuring out what does that balance look like, and I think that's going to be important when you think about just the bias incident and offense, that tracking that is involved with this particular initiative that you have on your work plan. Because it's a delicate balance, like as you indicated, Commissioner Edwards, is that if it is on private property versus public property, what does that look like when it is considered a bias offense versus an incident? And then you're talking about just the different statutes that it connects to.
Talking about the First Amendment, where you're talking about things on private property also.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, the police are faced with that too.
But I still think we need to track it somehow.
Yep. And so
there our plan.
Mm-hmm. And so even just another piece that's added to the bias offense and incident initiative that is on the HRRC work plan, it is also, what does that look like after that tracking, right? Because I think people are also concerned with that acknowledgement piece that there is bias incidents and offenses that occur in the city of Edina, but what do we do in order to go to action? And so that's another part of that that bias offense and response plan that needs to be further solidified with a partnership with the police department, as you are all indicating, and as Manager Neal has indicated, that this is a potential to have a police liaison within the HRC. So going back to that previous motion that you all had, to be able to expand this particular work plan, is it to also add establishing a whether, and this could be determined on the frequency that you might have. Is it establishing a quarterly meeting with a police liaison to get any updates? Because again, it does differentiate between a bias offense and a bias incident. And so some of the things that may be occurring as far as bias incidents, the public may not know or the community may not know. However, a bias incident, or excuse me, offense is where there's more attention. Yeah.
So we go back to the motion then, Heidi?
Yeah, Jasmine, can you repeat the motion? Is she still with us?
I thought it was a great discussion. I mean, it's.
Yeah,
and I'm getting very impactful on my phone about this, so I wanted to make sure we continued the discussion about how we proceed. So thank you, Heidi.
More detailed notes than I do, Commissioner Edwards?
Huh?
Do you have more detailed notes? I only took a few notes.
Well, and who is one of our, I guess she's a public, involved, she was on the commission for
right.
years, is saying, what's the difference? How do you deal with this? And, you know, she's seeing me on the phone, so I know she's listening. She's one of our callers. So I just wanted to make sure we covered it and we had some kind of a process to move forward. So
My motion in response to Initiative 6 and City Manager Scott Neal's recommendation that we create a liaison position directly from the HRRC to the police force.
Okay. Jennifer, can you take the roll call?
Yep. Chair Behringer?
Aye.
Commissioner Edwards?
Aye.
Commissioner Epstein?
Aye.
Commissioner Felton?
Aye.
Commissioner Ismail?
Aye.
Commissioner Meek?
Aye.
Oh, I didn't hear that. Michelle, did you say something?
Yes, I said aye.
Okay, sorry. Thank you.
That's okay. Oh, yeah.
Commissioner Nelson?
Abstain.
I can't hear you. My answer is aye, but I can't hear you.
Okay, we got that. Thank you. Commissioner Stringer Moore?
All right, and the motion passes. So we can move on to Initiative 7. Celebrate 50th anniversary of HRC in Edina by submitting a proclamation for City Council approval. This is also item E in our agenda. So I guess we'll go ahead and discuss it now. I just wanted to make sure that it was noted that it's in 2 places. So Jim, did you want to go ahead?
Yeah. Commissioner Kennedy and I drafted the proclamation. I don't see it in the packet. Is it in the packet?
I didn't see it.
I have it available for you all if I can share my screen.
Maybe you could do that. I don't have it in front of me because I'm on the road, but
one moment.
I'm going to mute myself while you do that because I'm making a lot of noise here.
So this is a proclamation that was created for the 50th anniversary of the HRC. And I don't know how you would like to provide the information if somebody wanted to read it or whatnot. But really, this proclamation, as I'm looking at it, shares the highlights of the Human Rights and Relations Commission. And really thinking about that, even with this particular proclamation that has been created, it's a lot of work that the HRC has done in the 50 years since this particular commission has been created. And so whereas within the 50 years, you'll notice that there's a highlight given the Tom Oy Award, the annual commemoration of the Holocaust, engaged with the communities in conversations about critical issues, became a human rights city, supported the CEDAW, the United Nations Convention on Eliminating the Discrimination Against Women, supported domestic partnership ordinance and gay marriage, created a policy to address the bias offense, supported the expansion of affordable housing in Edina, and advocated for the inclusion of human rights. So you'll notice that even within this this whereas or this description, that is just a brief description of what the HRC has been able to accomplish, and really thinking about the legacy that it's had. And so for this particular work plan that you all have, it's to create a proclamation that the city council will go ahead and vote on to be able to have that July 10th would be the 50th anniversary of the Human Rights Relations Commission. And so at the very bottom, it's to affirm that the city's commitment to maintaining Edina as an inclusive and welcoming city for all.
What do you need, Heidi? You need us to proclaim that or nominate it?
Yeah, the motion would be to approve this and send it on to the city council.
I approve, nominate.
Second.
So move that this be passed on to the city council. Or I move.
I second.
Any further discussion? All right, Jennifer, could you take the roll call?
Yes, Chair Berenger. Commissioner Edwards.
Approve.
Commissioner Epstein.
Aye.
Commissioner Felton.
Aye.
Commissioner Ismail. Commissioner Meek.
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson.
Aye.
Commissioner Ross.
Aye.
Commissioner Stringer Moore.
Aye.
And the motion passes. So, okay, thank you so much for your work on that, Jim.
Sure.
Review and comment on Housing Task Force comprehensive housing policy using a race and equity lens. And I don't think we have access to that material yet. Okay, so.
No, that has not been provided to the HRC.
Okay, moving along, Initiative 9, appoint up to 2 members to provide feedback on PARC's initiative to develop criteria that incorporate sustainability and equity for prioritizing capital improvements for park infrastructure needs, including playground equipment, warming houses, and core amenities for expansion and replacement before final criteria goes to council. And this was Edwards and Meek.
And we have not received any feed or any of that particular criteria from the parks.
Okay. So that's it for the work plan. Heidi, I had a question. We have new commissioners, and I was wondering how they would be able to sign on. I know Mark has already agreed to work on item number 5, but how do they sign up for other items that they might be interested in, particularly Fartoon, who was not able to participate?
So I think that in the last, when this particular work plan was rolled out, commissioners were able to go ahead and select the work plan item that they wanted to go ahead and participate in. And so looking at the work plan itself, there are, it does look like that one item has 4 people. And so even within that particular, within all of the work plans, we want to structure it between 3 to 4 people. And so if there are things in the initiative that you want to go ahead and engage in, I think that would be an email to you so that people can go ahead and just provide their preferences.
Sure. Sounds good. And also I wanted to ask, would Ryan be able to help Fartoon with any technology issues? I know this was an issue when we had our practice meeting as well.
Yep, I can go ahead and reach out to Ryan and connect Ryan with Fartoon.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so with that, we are on to chair and member comments. So yes, I just wanted to say that the city has great information about voting with the August primary coming up and the general election in November. And the voting is a little bit different than in past years because of COVID-19. So I encourage everyone to check out what voting looks like on the city website. So how do we do this, given that we usually go around the table?
I would suggest if you going ahead and just going around as you would for the roll call, as we have done in this meeting. So it would be Commissioner Edwards. Do you have anything to add?
Okay, so Cindy?
Yeah, two things. Vote by mail early, hopefully. I'm an election judge and I don't want to see anybody in the poll. I hope you've all done everything you can do to get a ballot. And happy Gay Pride Month. We haven't talked a lot about it, but it is in fact June. So that's an important month for us. And we're going to have virtual stuff or whatever. And stay healthy, please. And wear masks, do everything you can do. So that's my comment.
Happy Pride, Cindy. Commissioner Epstein?
I have no comments. Thank you.
Commissioner Thompson?
I have no comments this meeting.
Okay. Commissioner Meek?
No comments, thank you.
Commissioner Nelson?
My only comment is I'm really glad to see so many people listening to our meeting today. I hope they stay engaged. There were some great comments.
Yeah, I agree. Commissioner Ross?
Everyone, please stay safe.
Commissioner Moore, I believe, had to jump off. Do we still have Commissioner Iyer? Okay, and Commissioner Waldron was not here. All right, did I miss anyone? Okay.
Since I'm talking from the phone, I had a trouble of getting in earlier. It was something to do with my tablet, but I think I kind of figured it out. So which will be good for next month's meeting, because it was something to do with my tablet, and I'm gonna switch with another one that I have older. But I don't have a comment, but I just want to say thank you. And it was an education for me my first day, learning from you guys, and listening to me was what I needed. And there was a lot of things that you guys talk about it, which was a great things. And like everybody said, stay safe, and thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's great. Okay, let's see. So now we're on to staff comments.
Yep. So I just have two things. I just wanted to thank you all for providing feedback for the limited English proficiency policy that was drafted. That has already been, with your feedback as well as other staff members provided feedback. It has been presented to our executive leadership. And so the next steps will be going ahead and looking at what does training look like for the limited English proficiency for staff members. So I just wanted to thank you and let you know that is the next step based on feedback from a lot of different people within the city. And then the second item I just wanted to let you know about is just the upcoming meetings that we have. I know in our practice meeting, folks had asked, what does this potentially look like for the next meetings? And so right now we don't have an update. So we are currently just going with that we will be virtual for the next month's meeting. And so for the next month's meeting, we have, that will be on, excuse me, I had my, our next meeting that we will have as a group will be on July 28th, which will be a week after the 50th proclamation has been presented to council. And then the only things to highlight is that we will, if we have any updates with any of the meetings, whether it be virtual or in person, we will let you know as well.
Question, I had a email from one of our citizens. He couldn't get on for some reason tonight, but this is going to be posted somewhere. I mean, you'll be able to watch it later on. Is that correct?
Yes.
And how quickly do those get put up on the website?
Do you want me to answer that, Heidi?
Sure.
This is Jennifer Garski. I'm working with Scott Denfeld, our video production coordinator, to get him the recording of this meeting. And he will probably post it as early as like tomorrow. It should be on the website tomorrow afternoon.
Great.
You can direct people to the watch a meeting area of our website, and it'll be listed there among our other meetings that we record. And they'll be able to just click on it.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer.
Yep.
And then one other thing to also mention is that with the proclamation that will be presented to City Council on the 21st of July, there will be an ask to have at least one commission member from the HRC accept the proclamation. So is there a motion or to have someone be volunteer to accept the proclamation?
I motion that our chair accepts on behalf of the commission.
When is this?
The 21st of July.
Oh, I think
I second, assuming she can make it.
Sorry, it's on my work calendar. Let's see. Yeah, I am on vacation that week. Sorry. I would be happy to go otherwise.
I'll modify the motion to say vice chair.
Michael, you've been volunteered.
I couldn't unmute it. July 21st?
Yes.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
You said to accept? Yeah, we'll talk about it.
Do we need to vote or can we just go ahead?
Thank you, Michael.
I think just for the sake of just because this is a group decision, we can just go ahead and go through the roll call.
Okay, sounds good. Jennifer?
Chair Berenger.
Aye.
Commissioner Edwards.
Aye.
Commissioner Epstein.
Aye.
Commissioner Felton.
Aye.
Commissioner Ismail.
Aye.
Commissioner Meek.
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson.
Aye.
Commissioner Ross.
Aye.
Commissioner Stringer Moore.
She had to go. So,
yep.
And the motion carries. So, and thank you, Michael. So I think that's it then.
Move to adjourn.
So moved.
Jennifer, could you go through the roll call one last
Yep.
time?
One last time. Chair Berenger.
Aye.
Commissioner Edwards.
Aye.
Commissioner Epstein.
Aye.
Commissioner Felton.
Aye.
Commissioner Ismail.
Aye.
Commissioner Meek.
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson.
Aye.
Commissioner Ross.
Aye.
And Commissioner Stringer Moore, I think, is no longer on the call.
And we are so adjourned.
Thank
you.
everyone.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.
Nice to see all of you.
Good job, guys. Heidi,
Thank you.
hang in there. This is tough.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Have a good
Bye,
night.
guys. Thank you.